What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm super excited to introduce this next tutorial series, which is building a personal website using Next.JS and Chakra. So this will be a multi-video series. In this first video, though, we are going to look at installing Next.js and adding Chakra to Next.js. And then we're going to set up some of the basic boilerplate UI elements. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to create our next app. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this command into your terminal. For project name, let's just name this Next.js Chakra personal website. All right, so that's set up. Let's go ahead and cd into that folder. And if we list everything out, you see our basic Next.js starter files. All right, let's go ahead and open up these files in Visual Studio Code. And let's say yarn dev to actually run this site, and then we'll take a look at it. All right, here we go. So I'm going to stop the server, and we're going to do some edits without it running. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is let us go ahead and delete this entire styles folder. Actually, we're not going to be using any CSS files here. We're going to be using CSS in JavaScript. It's more efficient that way. And then inside of pages, go ahead and open up index.js. And for now, let us go ahead and let's remove everything inside of the return and just put in some empty stuff like that, and then we'll just say index. Go ahead and remove this, and we'll keep head because we're going to be using that a bit later. And then rename home to index. So if you go to Chakra-UI.com, they have a getting started page. So we're basically going to run through this. And there's also Quickstart. If you want, you can install this example on the Next.js GitHub. It is Next.js with Chakra-UI already integrated. So if you want to do that, you can run this command here, but we're going to be going ahead and doing it manually so you can see the entire process. But you can also come back and use this for a reference. So the first thing we need to do is install the Chakra-UI library. Go ahead and copy the yarn line. If you want to use npm, that's fine, but I'm going to be using yarn in this tutorial. Make sure you are in the root, and then go ahead and paste that and install all of those packages. Okay, there we go. Let's move down the page. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set up Chakra provider at the root of our application. And it tells us if you're using Next.js, this is in app.js. So let's go ahead and open up our app.js, which is already here for us. Remove this first line because we deleted those. And then what we're going to do is we need to import the Chakra provider. And then we want to return this Chakra provider around our app. So let's go ahead and add some parentheses, paste in Chakra provider, and then copy this component with the page props passed in and throw it in the middle there. So that is it for that. The next thing is the custom theme. And this will allow us to extend Chakra's own default theme. So the stuff is optional, but 99% of the time you're going to want to customize this. So we're going to go ahead and add a new folder, call this styles, and then a new file inside of there, calling it theme.js. So the first thing that we need to do is add this import statement, which will add the extend theme function. And then below that, we're also going to add two more things. We want to import theme as Chakra theme, And then we're going to want to import our breakpoints. And they mention that down inside of the customized theme file here. So you can check out any of these links for more information of what I'm about to do next. Then, as you can see here, you can extend anything you want by simply creating a variable for it and then passing in some props inside of there. And then at the end, we need to export that and putting that, passing it inside of our extend theme function. So we're going to do just that. What we're going to do is we're going to say const overrides, and that will be equal to these braces, and then inside of here we can pass in our extensions. So first off, we're going to say Chakra theme. We want to pass that in, and then everything else will go here. But before we do that, let me go ahead and say const custom theme and set that equal to extend theme, passing in the override. So that is what they do right here. Except here they're just passing in one override. We're passing in a bunch of them. So whatever we pass in here will be extended. Then we need to export this file. We'll say export default custom theme. So I want to export some fonts. We're going to use Google Fonts. So let's say fonts. And then we need to add this. So up top here, I'm going to say const fonts. And then we're going to say Chakra theme dot, and then you have a bunch of different options here. The one we want is fonts. And then we can say body, and we'll set the body to this. And basically all this is doing is saying use this font first. If that doesn't work for some reason, fall back to this font. If that doesn't work, fall back to this. And then we basically just have a bunch of fallbacks. And we're going to do the same thing for the heading also. And we're going to use the same. So we have all these fonts, but we don't have Enter. So we need to go ahead and install that from Google Fonts. So we're going to need to do two things. First, we're going to need to install that package. So let's go ahead and add that package. We'll say yarn add next Google Fonts. And then the next thing that we need to do is actually import that. So we're going to import that from the document.js page. So this is another Next.js specific page similar to app.js. Let's go ahead and add a new file, underscore document.js. And there's certain stuff you have to add in here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. And this is from the Next.js website. So this line here, you have to import all of this and you have to use them. So as you can see, we're simply exporting our default class called myDocument, extending next document, and we're rendering this HTML. We have our head. Although there's nothing there, we need to add it. It will give us an error if we don't. And then we have our body with our main and our next script. So we are passing in color mode script, and this is Chakra-UI specific. And then Google Fonts right here, we are grabbing our Enter fonts. And that is this import here, and then the color script, like I said, is imported from that. So this is what you want your document.js file to look like. So now that we have that, the Google Fonts should work. So let's go back into our theme.js and keep working here. So next, let's go ahead and extend the breakpoints. We imported this here, so let's go ahead and use it. We'll say const breakpoints equals create breakpoints. And then you need to pass in 4 breakpoints here. So we'll say small. We'll give this 40 EM. Medium, we'll set that to 52 EM. Large, we'll set to 64 EM. And I don't want an extra large, but we need to pass in 4 when you override it. So I'm just going to set large again to 62 EM. And then we need to add that down here as well. And the breakpoints are simply going to easily allow us to add styles to make it mobile responsive. So instead of adding our own media queries, we can just pass in as a list, and you'll see this soon, 3 different styles for each of these breakpoints. So for example, it would look something like this. And all this is saying, the padding for this element, if it's on a large screen, make it 4. If it's on a medium screen, make it 2. And if it's on a small screen, make it 0. And this is a lot easier than writing a media query to do that in CSS. Next, let's override the font weights. We're going to do this right in here. We're going to say font weights. Normal will be 300. Medium will be 600. And bold will be 700. And now we can use these font weights as styles. And then lastly, we want to customize the font sizes. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in here because there's kind of a lot of them. So we can use extra small or medium, and that will equal this. So instead of adding the hard-coded value, we'll just use this. That way, if we want to come back in the future and change any of this stuff, you just have to change it in one place rather than everywhere that you used it. So that's it for our custom theme. Make it a little smaller so we can look at all that. Now let's jump back into app.js, and we need to actually use that. So let's go ahead and import our custom theme. And then we're going to use that down here. So on our Chakra provider, first we're going to say reset CSS. And then secondly, we're going to say theme, and then we're going to set that equal to the custom theme that we imported. And now Chakra has its own color mode provider, so dark mode is very easily added in Chakra. So in order to persist that, or we can choose to use the user's default preference, we need to add color mode provider. So we're going to add that from here. After Chakra provider, we're going to say color mode provider. And we also need use color mode to check what the color mode is. And then what we can do is we can come down here, and inside of our Chakra provider, but outside of our page props, we're going to add color mode provider. And this takes in a couple of properties as options. And we can set the initial color mode to light, and we can say use system color mode true. Now you can change these however you want. If we set this to true, if it's nighttime for the user, it will display the dark mode when they first get to the site. But if you turn this false, it will display whatever this is. And then there's a couple of other color mode things that we're going to add in here. But first, let's go ahead and actually build out the index page and add some components so we can switch the color mode. It'll be easier to see that way. So I'm going to create a new folder called components. I'm going to make 2 components. The first component will be container.js, and the second will be DarkModeSwitch.js. Now make sure to name these with capital letters, as that is convention. Now we're going to start with the dark mode switch. I'm just going to copy and paste some code because I already went over how to do this in my Next.JS beginner series, so go ahead and take a look at that if you want. But the code is fairly simple. So all this code does is it makes a button, and if you click it, it will switch the color mode. We do need to add the icons because those are separate. So if we go back to here and we go down a little bit in optional packages, you'll see Chakra-UI icons. Go ahead and add that. And let me go ahead and run this just so we can see where we are at. Go back to our local host and refresh. There we go. So we see index, and that's because we're just displaying that. And if we want to go ahead and look at that color mode, let's say import DarkModeSwitch from component/DarkModeSwitch. If we throw that in here, and if we click it, there we go. So as you can see, it's changing, but the entire background isn't changing. So we're gonna fix that in a bit. But first, let's work in our container. So basically what this container will be is a wrapper for any page we want to add to our website. So for example, once we build the container, we will return that container around everything for the index page and then add what we want to inside. So it allows us to save a lot of time and code by not rewriting our basic page styles multiple times. And we're gonna do the same thing for our blog posts too. We're gonna have our default file with our blog post layout, and then we'll put any individual or specific stuff in outside of that file. So let's go ahead and import React from React. And we also need some Chakra-UI UI elements. We need use color mode. We need a button. We need flex, and we need box. And that is from Chakra-UI React. And then I'm also going to import some other things. This will be used for our navigation bar. We need to import next link, and that is from next/link. Then we're also going to import styled from emotion/styled, and we're going to use that to build our nav bar. And then lastly, let's go ahead and also import that DarkModeSwitch, because we're not going to want to use that in the index. We're going to want to add that to our container because the navigation bar will be shown on every page. We'll say const container, pass in our children, and at the end here we will export our container. So now if we go ahead and we'll say container, in index we're going to import that, so we'll say import container from component/container. If we wrap this in a container, so we're getting an error, and let's see what went wrong. Yep, I forgot to add a return statement. There we go. Now this should work. Awesome. So as you see, container is coming through, and we can even throw in that DarkModeSwitch. So now that is coming from the container. So you can already start to see how easy it is to add more pages. If you want an about page, just copy this code, change that to about, and you're good to go. Let's start to build out this container a bit more though. So first off, let's go ahead and build a nav bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to say const, we'll call this sticky nav. Now will be equal to styled flex. And then you can do the back tilde and we can enter in some CSS here for our navigation bar. So we want our nav bar to be sticky, so we're going to say position sticky, and then we're going to declare some other styles too. I'm just going to copy them. It's just a lot easier that way, saves some time. Okay, so we're increasing the z-index, we're sticking it to the top, giving it a little blur to the background when you scroll, and then a little transition. So as you scroll down, the nav bar will go slightly with it, and then it'll stick to the top of the page. And you'll see what I mean when we add that and see it. Now we can use that navigation bar. So inside of here, let's say sticky nav. And this takes in some more properties. So if we go back here, we're not getting anything. So let me first add in some nav items. We're going to say box, and then each of our navigation items, so home, about, whatever we want, will go in here. But first we're going to wrap them in a next link. We're going to give an href of whatever we want. This will be the home, so index or home is just slash at the root. And we're going to say pass href because it's an internal link. And then we're going to put a button inside of here, and we'll call that home. There we go. Now we need to put a couple of properties on this button. We'll say as a. We'll say variant ghost. We'll give padding. This is what I was talking about earlier with how it's easy to add various styles for different breakpoints. We can just pass them in as a list. So 1, 2, and 4. And then we can say on hover, we want to change the background color. And we want this to be dynamic. So if we're on the light mode, we want it to be a different color than if we're on dark mode. So we're gonna have to go back up to the top here. And first let's say const color mode. Nope, not use color mode, just color mode is equal to use color mode. So that will get us a reference to the current color mode. And then we can define a light and a dark color for anything we want. So let's say const background color is equal to, we'll say light is a white and dark is this hex 171717, and that is basically black, but not but it's like a dark gray, I guess. And we can also say const nav hover background. We'll give light gray dot 600, and we'll set dark to gray dot 300. And we're not overriding any of the colors. So if I go back to Chakra's website and we go, I think it's in the default theme. Yeah, so if you scroll down here, these are the default colors. So if you want to use this color here, it's gray.50. If you want to use this, it's red.400. And you can customize any of these colors as you wish, but I'm not going to mess around with the colors. Okay, so let's go ahead and now add this background color. So instead of saying background color is equal to gray 500, which you could do, we'll take a look at that. But if we changed it to dark mode, it would be that same color. So to use it dynamically, what we can do is we can say nav hover background color mode. And that will change it to either gray 600 or gray 300, depending on the color mode. It's light, so now it's 600. But if we change it to dark mode, it would be 300. Let's go ahead and add that dark mode switch as well. We're going to want to add that outside of the box. And the reason for that is we're going to make this sticky nav space between so that the navigation items are on the left and the DarkModeSwitch is on the right. But for now, we have a switch here, and if I hit it, change to dark mode, and as you can see, the background changes as well. So let me go ahead and copy this, and we're going to add one more. We'll call this blog. The href for this will be /blog, and this is all the same. So now we have 2.